Welcome back to yet another 213 crispy video, and today we're back on our antique RC10T rebuild. So episode 1, we've already gone through and stripped everything apart, got it all nice and clean using our wonderful scrubbing bubbles, and we started to do the reassembly. I rebuilt all 4 of the shocks. I have 30 weight in the front and 40 weight in the rear with the original Team Associated silicone shock oil that we had. Yeah. So that is that. So today's video, we are going to finish by installing our electric motor in there. We're going to mount our tires that have been cleaned up, so they should be good to go, and then we'll throw a LiPo battery into it and make sure everything still functions the way that it does. And then video 3 will be a bash session outside somewhere at some point. It will not be today because today, unfortunately, Saturday, it is a cold, wet, dreary fall day. It's kind of normal for Ohio, I should say. So it is what it is. My workbench is still a disastrous of a mess. It is what it is. So let's start by figuring out which gear that we want to use with this. The long story short, it does have a gear already on it. I honestly have no clue what size it is, but I believe I think it's a 16. Yeah, I believe it's a 16 spur gear on the motor. And this is a Midnight Trinity motor that we had already rebuilt prior to doing this video series. So let me find all my spur gears, or pinion gears, I should say. Sorry, that's spur, that's pinion gear. Let me try to find all my pinion gears real quick. I've got a 35mm camera case full of them. I'll bring you guys right back. Give me a minute. Okay, guys. Let's start over. So now that we've got everything set up electronically within our chassis, we've rebuilt our shocks, everything's cleaned, everything's been oiled, bearings have been oiled, everything, we're good to go. The final step is to work on a motor. We've already torn this one apart, rebuilt it. I did it off camera, soldered new connectors on it, heat shrinked everything, new XT60 plugs. I have a whole container full of gears, and honestly I don't know what I want to put on it, but I do know what is on here currently is too small. I honestly don't remember the size of this, but I do know it's smaller. It's probably the 1.5. That'd be my bet. Nope. Smaller. .27. So that's that. Like I said, I believe this is a... Can't tell. This stuff's so old. I think it's an 18. So I'm going to look for something a little bit bigger. I don't want to go crazy big, but I do want to go a little bit bigger because it, in my opinion, it's just too small for this application. It struggles. It just basically hits top speed way too quick. Keep in mind, I am running a smaller diameter road tire on this versus the off-road tires that it normally would have. And to give you a size comparison, between the two. So like here is a set of Proline Pro 92 fuzzies, and these are Proline Street Stocks tires. So you notice there's a substantial size difference on the height. So because I'm using a smaller tire, if I put the bigger tires on, it wouldn't be that big of an issue. But I'm not really going to be racing it, and it's not going to see dirt that often. It's going to be more like gravel, and these street tires will do just fine for that. I just need a bigger gear to compensate for the smaller tire. So 18 was on it before. So I'm going to look for like a 21. I don't think, the problem is probably don't have anything. So like that's a 17, that's an 18. That's a 16. I believe that's another 17. So it looks like it's double stamped, but that's another 17. I believe that's a 19. It's a 24, so it's way too big. That's a 25, it's way too big. I'm going from one extreme to the other. I don't know what size that is. It's stamped 5, but that's huge. I don't know what size that is either. It's big. So that's a 21. That's probably going to be our culprit, but no, this thing's worn out. I'll show you that in a minute. It's a 23, so 24, 23. Let me see what I have on the other motors, because I don't think I'm going to have anything. So bear with me, guys. I'm over here. So I've got one motor with a gear on it. There's another motor with a gear on it. That one's worn out too. Those aren't going to work. Let's see what I got up here. Nothing. Nothing. I'm digging through a bunch of my old stuff off camera, guys. You gotta trust me. The stuff's all over the place. It's in containers, for example. It's in a container like this, full of just a bunch of random stuff. The stuff's been not used in so long that pretty much everything has been just kind of smorgasborded aboard and tossed around and everything else. So just trust me. I'm looking. So that don't look good. I don't see a whole lot of options without buying a new one, which I'm really not going to do. Not for these, anyway. So this gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. Like, we've got tons of motors. So there's a couple gears on these. Let me see what we got. So the green one has probably what I need, actually. That's a 19 turn, or 19 tooth, I should say. It's 18 tooth, 1918. I don't know what that is. Let's get that off real quick and see. Of course, it's a different size. Why would it be? Well, that don't fit. What in the world? Huh. It's almost like it's stripped on. It probably is. No, my luck. Yep. I'm gonna go with that stripped on there. That's why it's stuck on there. So, that ain't gonna work. Oh. Okay, well, let's, what options do we have? A 19 tooth and a 23. 23 is worn out, so I can't run that. What size is this metal one? You know what, let's run this metal one. It's going to be on the smaller side, not by much. So this is probably a, it's probably a 22 tooth pinion. So let's go ahead and affix this to where we want it. So I'm going to put it there. Wrong size. Metric. 2. It's probably too big. 1.5. Wrong size. So it's standard. Like I said, a lot of this stuff's old. So that's the one. So metric really was not common in the RC world when most of this stuff was around, which is why most of it's not metric. It's gonna be too big, I can tell by looking at it. Yep. So it's kind of one of those weird sizes. Okay guys, we've got our motor set in. It's not mounted yet because I have not tinkered with actually the mounts, so let's do that next. The bottom on this chassis, it's got a hole in the bottom and a slot in the top. So I've always learned to do the bottom first and then work your way up to the slot after that. That's just the way my father taught me. It makes sense if you think about it. So I am perfectly fine. The thing is you use the slot to put the pressure onto your spur gear. So, and you want to make sure you get it in the correct spot in the bottom, because if not, your gear or your motor may be too far forward or too far backwards, and then you can't get enough pressure onto your spur gear whenever you go to tighten this down. So start at the bottom, get it, I don't want to say snug, but get it where you know that you're against the chassis. Because the downside is, if you try to do that and make it too tight, the problem with it is you'll eat up a spur gear, and if it's too loose, you'll eat up the pinion or the spur or both. Usually it's both. But like I said, the way that the bottom is set up, kind of hard to see, but the bottom is in a single pin, the top is in a groove, so you loosen these up and slide the top forward, and that puts the pressure on your gearing. So let's go ahead, move that up. You want just a little bit of play in your spur gear, but you don't want a ton. I mean, you just want it to I'm talking barely rock back and forth freely, and that is basically the perfect lashing that you need. and then go ahead and tighten the top first, because that's the piece that's going to move, and then tighten the bottom last. And then I always suggest doing a function test. Why is this not tightening down? Okay, did I forget? I think I forgot a washer. Always check to make sure your motor spins free. So let me pull these back out. The original hardware has been lost for the motors, so I had to go to Ace, which is why you see this weird collaboration of hardware. And it's not ideal by any means, and I know that. So, yeah, I forgot a washer. That's weird. Okay, we'll use one of these. Okay. Why was that being weird? Is one stripped out? Nope. Okay. Don't know why that wasn't working like it's supposed to. So let's try this again. Start with the bottom. And like I said, because I'm using hardware that I got from Ace Hardware, because the threads and stuff are not exactly, yeah, the threads are the same, but just the head's different. It's a tapered head versus a standard Allen head like this. So you got that. I'm using a tapered head, which is why you see me using two washers. One washer is a lock washer, the other one's a flat washer. The flat washer is just to help keep pressure on the lock washer. It's not ideal, but it's going to work for what I need it for. So now that we've got both of these started, let's go ahead, loosen these back out so I can adjust the motor. So there we go. So now the motor's able to move freely up and back and forward. So we want to set just like that. I don't know if you guys can see this. Way too loose. Let me see if I can zoom you in. Come on. Oh. You're gonna fall. Hold on. Okay. Let's see. How does this look for you guys? Brighten that up a little bit. Okay. So you notice the gearing. If I bring this to the farthest back point running this bigger gear, it's close. But that's too much play, because that's going to end up eating up your spur gear. So what you need to do is just bring this forward a little bit, and it don't take much. You want to get it so there's just a tick of movement, and that's perfect. So let's go ahead and tighten this down. It just moved on me. Check our play again. We're good. Tighten the bottom one down. Tighten the top again. We're good. So, good with the play there. Good with play here. Always check to make sure it spins freely, because sometimes these screws could be too long and protrude in and damage a motor. So always make sure you have a free spinning motor before you put a battery into it. Anytime you mess with gearing or anytime you mess with pinions, because the last thing you want to do is destroy any of your gear that you've got. So next step is going to be to put on your tires, front and rear. I'm not going to bore y'all with that, so let me go turn off the camera, put these on. I'll bring you guys back. I'll be right back. And we are fully assembled. Everything's set, ready to go. Functionality test, everything looks like it's good. We've got power. The only thing I have left to do is attach the switch, tape up the wiring, but I got to attach the switch right here to the chassis. I'll do that off camera. No, you guys don't have to worry about that, but I've got my LiPo battery monitor double-sided to the battery, got the motor hooked up, we've got all 4 tires put on. Just to give you an idea of quality of these old RC cars and what I mean by how they're built, that will spin for like 2 minutes. Yes, I know the tire's out of balance, but these are 3-piece wheels, and they've got an insert that runs around the middle and they clamp onto them. So, but you see, do you hear the bearings? You might, barely. Those are original bearings to this truck. But this is what I'm talking about, quality. This is an RC10T that was bought new, probably late 80s. Still works perfectly fine. The old girl cleaned up nice and good. I am in the market for some new A-arms, and I'm going to show you why here in a minute. But watch this. You're going to notice, got a little bit of play, and that play is coming from the actual arm. Just basically, it just got so much looseness to it. So eventually this part's going to break. So I need some new A-arms and maybe some knuckles. If I can find a knuckle, I'll go ahead and buy them too. But here's what I'm talking about. I mean, it's just out of balance. Watch. So you notice it's just kind of walking all over the place. So unfortunately, these old girls, they're noisy. So that's kind of normal for them. I've lubed up everything I could. I've put oil on all the bearings in the back. I put oil on the motor because from the factory, I know I've got one torn apart. Hold on. So from the factory, one of these motors comes with basically bushings instead of bearings, and I've never understood why they would do that. And my father is a machinist and engineer, so he loved tinkering with these old things as well. So what happens is, make sure I got this right, that fits inside there like so, and it runs on a magnetic field and spins around at 15,000 RPMs, and then your cap pretty much holds everything together like so. The downside is like I said, they use bearings instead of, or they use bushings instead of bearings, and they do that on the bottom and the top of your housings, and that it generates a lot of heat, friction, which then kills and slows down motors. So my father had came up with the idea of tearing apart the motors and putting in a very specific ball bearing in all of the motors, and it would help free up the motor, which then in turn created more RPMs and more power, which then basically, I don't want to say it was cheating, but it was the way that people were doing it back then. Is it's all about this, the speed of any RC in general. It's not about the motor. What I mean by that, it's not about the quality of the item that you're purchasing. It's about everything in general. It's all as everything as a whole. So you've got to make sure that every bearing is completely free. You've got to make sure that the suspension travels 100% smooth as it could be. Because if you've got one hiccup somewhere, so let's say you got a bearing in the front that's dragging, that's going to cause you to have some issues when it comes to setting up, which then is going to cause you driving problems, and then it's going to end up slowing you down on the track because you can't get the consistent feel that you're looking for. All of that matters. So same thing with the motor. If you can get your motor to free up and spin 5% faster than anybody else, that in turn is going to create shorter lap times and get you the wins that you're looking for. And that's something that my father had learned a long time ago, was making everything smooth and free and everything to be cohesive together. So that's something that he has taught me whenever I was racing at a younger age. I do remember always tinkering with motors, always testing things, trying new things, and coming up with ways to, I'm not saying cheating, but coming up with ways that may not exactly be quote-unquote per the guidelines, or hey, there's not a rule for this, but let's try it type thing. And it's just pushing the boundaries, and that's something that, that's part of racing, really. As you see, I'm running my LiPo 5200 on here, and I have a LiPo battery pack. These came from Amazon. I bought a 5-pack. I think they were like 10 bucks. They are, they say Hot RC, but that's not who sold these to me. Camway, C-A-M-W-A-Y, 5-piece 2-in-1. They're basically just an alarm. And then the reason why I kind of like this one, and I would bet they're all the same, it's going to flash voltage on each cell, and then it's going to give you the total voltage. So for example, cell 1 is 4.14, cell 2 is 4.13, and the total is 8.27. So I'm assuming you guys can see that flashing. I'm just trying to block some light so you can see it. Let's go ahead and show you what the body looks like. This is one of a couple bodies that we have for this truck. This body is the last one that I know of that was raced, and I am missing one of the battery posts. That is on my parts list to buy as well. And then let me get this stand out of the way so you guys can see this in its natural state. So this is this truck with the street tires on it, and it's got some pretty soft springs on it to begin with. I don't have any other springs for this truck, and I don't know why. I've never understood that part, but it did have. I'm probably going to end up stiffening this back end because this thing seems like it's sitting real low. The front's pretty high, which is kind of how I want it. I want the front to be a little softer, but I want this back end to be up a little bit higher because the kids are going to bash it outside. And the last thing I want to do is break it. So the parts list that I need for this truck is a body mount, 2 A-arms, and 2 rear knuckles. If I can find them. I know that's going to be a tight chore, just because of the age of this vehicle, but it does function. It is back to normal. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to give you some good close-up shots of this truck, and we'll get it on the ground. I'll get it in a spot where you can see some better pictures. And with that, we're going to wrap this up. Thank y'all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Actually, hold on really quick. I'll show you some of the other bodies really fast. Let me dig them out because they're in a bag full of other stuff. I believe it's just these 2 bodies. Yeah. Yep, just these 2. Okay. So that the white and blue one and silver was my father's race body, and I have a kind of a polka dotted pink and blue that I don't think he ever raced, but it's been cracked about 100 times and been glued together. So I don't know if this is a bash body or if this is a race body, but being that it doesn't have any numbers or no stickers or nothing on it, I'm going to go with the wild shot and say that was a bash body. And then I have an original team associated number 6131 body that has not even been cut out. That still has not been ran. My father painted this, I have no clue how long ago, and it's got some damage from being in storage. I can probably take a heat gun and probably get that to bend out and get rid of that crink, the crease there, but this is an original body from the early 90s that has never been mounted on a vehicle. Now, I'm probably going to do a 3-part video, but I'm going to wrap this one up for 2. The third one's going to be me running around outside on the streets and probably in the yard, and maybe if I get lucky, at the Ohio RC factory. I may take it for a couple, I almost call them victory laps, but something like that. I don't know yet. Get it kind of in its natural habitat. That's what I would like to do with this. I'm not going to race it because it's too old. I don't think the parts are there for it, and it just can't support it. And I don't want to stress this thing out any more than I have to, because I would prefer that this thing lasts another 30 years instead of being broke and not being able to be used. So, with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you all for watching, and thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the restoration of the RC10T and the history along that goes with it. And with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. You all have a wonderful day. Thank you for hitting the like and subscribe button if you haven't. And also make sure you go check out my social media on Facebook and Instagram. You'll see a link down below in the description to that. And link to the description for the battery monitors that I'm using. And that's really about it. And I am going to wrap this video up. And thank you all for having a great day.